Hey people, it's Niles talking. Now it's continuing on from the previous video, so this is gonna go straight off. Rumors, roaches, rats, and gangs are the curse of Cabrini, Broden wrote in her Sun Times diary. She mused on the subject of the cockroach, how she developed the reflex to sweep walls and let faucets run before using them. So much so that when she left town on business, spending a night at a luxury hotel in Manhattan, she found herself doing the cockroach check. Did you remember to pat the raid, dear? Her husband asked drolly. She recounted going to bed to the CBS News, evening news, just as she and Jay did most nights, though now they're in a Cabrini Green bedroom, and Walter Cronkite was talking about them. In one diary entry, Byrne described standing at her apartment windows as white joggers waved and blew her kisses from Division Street. It was like seeing the first robin in the spring. We hope more will come by and not be afraid. A poll found that 60% of Chicagoans would vote for her if the elections were held then, with 27% saying her Cabrini Green state changed their vote. Two-thirds of those interviewed felt she was trying to solve problems at the housing project, and nearly three-quarters thought the move sincere. In many struggling sections of Chicago that were not Cabrini Green, community leaders couldn't comprehend why the city was funneling its scant resources into a single 70-acre plot of land. There were dozens of other public housing developments in the city and numerous neighborhoods in need of services and revitalization, most of them without the advantage of being a few blocks from the mayor's home. Many Cabrini Green residents also resented Byrne's presence. They accused her of creating a police state. Some reported being stopped and frisked 5 times whenever they walked from a building to the corner grocery. Hundreds were arrested, almost all for misdemeanors, with just about every case eventually dismissed. Elex Taylor, who'd operated a 911 teen club in the basement of his high-rise for decades, received an eviction notice because his 17-year-old son was found with marijuana. Even Police Superintendent Richard Breschek admitted that his officers were treading a very fine line between maintaining order and becoming oppressive. The activist Marion Stamps was especially vocal in her criticisms of the mayor. Her community center, Tranquility Marksman, sat across Division Street from Byrne's new apartment, and she had a close relationship with the families in the 1150-1160 North Sedgwick high-rise, the young men even bestowing on her the honorific Mama Stone for the support she'd given youngsters who later became Cobra Stones. Stamps was a short 35-year-old with a round, expressive face often framed in oversized oblong glasses, but with her bullhorn voice and intensity she gave the impression of someone of much larger stature. She was born in Jackson, Mississippi in 1945, and as a girl picketed the segregated public library that wouldn't lend her books. Medgar Evers lived close by, and the civil rights leader trained her as an organizer. When she was 17, she moved to Chicago, and in 1965, she landed in an apartment in Cabrini Green. Public housing, she said, was a godsend, a blessing compared to the slum housing I was living in before. For me, the move to Cabrini Green represented something bigger and better. It was also a place, she would say, where social workers question your man and womanhood and think nothing of it. Politicians make promises of jobs and welfare checks for your votes, or no jobs and no welfare check if you don't vote the way the precinct captain has dictated. Then we have Chicago's finest, the police who only serve and protect property and property rights. She blamed the street organizations as well, the misguided black folks who amongst us sell dope to our children, who intimidate and force our children into gangs. All this compelled her into activism. At Cabrini Green, she raised 5 daughters and headed up the Chicago Housing Tenants Organization. She ran a program for expectant mothers since the infant mortality rates there were on par with those in the third world. She pressed for a new school to be built in the community, one she helped gets named for the slave-turned-abolitionist Sojourner Truth, and she despised the idea of Mayor Byrne as a white savior coming to Cabrini Green to rescue the poor black folk. With a flair for the incendiary, Stamps compared Byrne to the Ku Klux Klan, telling news outlets the life at Cabrini Green with the mayor there was like living in a concentration camp or a South African township under apartheid. When you're not free to speak up or go out of your house, you're already victim to a form of death, she said. The tensions came to a head at the mayor's spiritual Easter celebration, a day-long event held in the third week of Byrne's stay at Cabrini Green. A giant white cross was erected on Division Street, and a choir sang along with Byrne that God's got Cabrini Green in his hands. The event featured a Ferris wheel, men playing the bongos, free corn candy, and circus rides. Reggie Fierce of the Bulls, Chet Lemon and Minnie Minoso of the White Sox, and members of the Bears and Chicago Hustle, the Women's Professional Basketball League franchise, all spoke from a stage about hope and revival. Byrne was introduced by one of her officials as the newest and one of the truest residents of Cabrini Green. In memoirs, Byrne said she responded to the event's low turnout by confronting the gangs, directly accusing them of scaring children away from the festivities. Division Street had become an actual dividing line between the Cobra Stones in the red towers on the south side of the street and the disciples in the white towers on the north side. Even disciples from the White and Reds saw each other as rivals. Pleading from the stage, Byrne implored children to go back to the high rises to get their friends, since they surely hate to miss the free food and games. As the mayor sang an off-key Easter parade, protesters waved placards chanting, "We need jobs, not eggs." Byrne contended that the demonstrators were all gang plans. It sounds like Trump nowadays with everything's fake news. But they included a range of Cabrini Green tenants and other activists, among them Marion Stamps. Her organization counseled dozens of residents who were evicted when Byrne moved into Cabrini Green, and it managed to reverse almost every single case. Stamps stood alongside members of the Heart of Uptown Coalition, a group that blamed the mayor's eviction policies for creating tensions between poor blacks and poor whites, many of them who were Appalachian coal miners who moved to Chicago's north side in pursuit of a better life, free of black lung disease. Stamps said that the placing of the white cross in their black neighborhood felt like psychological warfare. She pointed out Byrne managed to employ every convention of the white colonizers subduing a native population, appeasing them with religion, sports, petty entertainments, junk foods, and trinkets. At some point, the police decided they'd heard enough. As officers cuffed and hauled the protesters away, a lawyer tried to intervene. "What is he being charged with?" he shouted. "Who's the arresting officer?" He was thrown into a paddy wagon as well. All the while, one protester shrieked, "Assassins!" Byrne left on a California vacation the following week, deciding then to end her residency at Cabrini Green. In the 25 days that she lived in an apartment there, only one person had been shot. The crime wave had subsided. "We never will leave Cabrini, and neither should anybody else." Byrne wrote in her final diary entry, "The mayor did return to Cabrini Green occasionally. She showed up later that year when two teen residents opened the area's only newsstand. Over the summer, she led the ribbon cutting of a new athletic complex named for Police Sergeant James Severin and Officer Anthony Rizzato, killed in Cabrini Green in 1970 by snipers firing from two high rises. The plaque stated, "This field is dedicated to all people who wish to live together in brotherly love." 100 dignitaries were in attendance, including family members of the slain officers. Byrne came out for a couple of baseball games, and her husband coached a team there for a few seasons. McMullen bought children mitts, and when the grass went weeks without cutting, he called the park superintendent to get it done. But Byrne's bump in popularity from the Cabrini Green move was short-lived. Within a day of her leaving, news outlets were already going with the story of the housing development's intractable problems. Residents say services left with her. The 16-member security detail set up to guard the lobbies and monitor closed-circuit televisions was disbanded. The CHA said funding dried up. Byrne also undermined the goodwill she garnered with African Americans. For starters, she refused to get rid of Charles Swibel, who'd been abusing his position of the head of the CHA since 1963. Swibel was one of Byrne's biggest fundraisers and closest advisors, and the two of them often rode together in her limo. From 1978 to 1982, the 9 different reports by auditors and consultants found that the CHA was in shambles. The 9th of these reports was conducted by urban planner Oscar Newman, who had once argued that superblock public housing like that in Cabrini Green abetted crime by creating dead zones with no sense of shared ownership or communal supervision. Yet Newman concluded that the problems in Chicago went way beyond bad architecture. In every area we examined, from finance to maintenance, from administration to outside contracting, from staffing to project management, from purchasing to accounting, the CHA was found to be operating in a state of profound confusion and disarray. No one seems to be minding the store. What's more, no one seems to genuinely care. By then, each public housing development in Chicago had an average backlog of 1,000 unfilled repair requests. A survey of the 430 elevators across all Chicago Housing Authority buildings revealed that 250 of them weren't operating. After a 9-month investigation, the FBI charged 6 CHA maintenance workers with pilfering millions of dollars worth of paint, floor tiles, and roofing materials. Byrne fired Swibel only after Housing and Urban Development Department threatened to withhold federal funding to the city if she retained him. In his place, she installed her former campaign manager. At the same time, she also expanded the CHA's board from 5 to 7 members and appointed 3 white commissioners, changing the governing board from majority black to majority white. In 1983, after Byrne was voted out of office, her husband said he just so happened to bump into a pitcher from one of Cabrini Green's Little League teams he coached. "Hey, Mr. J, are you going to be running the team?" the boy asked. "No, Lefty. We got beat, you know." Anyway, now I hope you've enjoyed this, and this is a good example in political theater to manipulate the black community and to manipulate headlines, and it's also a good forerunner because we do know that Barack Obama used the black community not just in the American nation, but within Chicago, because we have to remember Obama was not native to Chicago's. I mean, I remember a commentator once said that he came to Chicago of all places despite having no real connection to the Tijuana Black American community, and he's right, because of all the places he could go, why Chicago? And he came there to develop credibility with the black community in America. So why not go to the most one of the most heavily populated black cities in America? Anyway, I hope you found this useful. Please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. I'm going to leave this article in the description. Let me just read it out for you because it's from excerpted with permission from High Rises, Cabrini Green, and the Fate of American Public Housing by Ben Austin, to be published on February 6th by HarperCollins Publishers, all rights reserved. This is just done for educational purposes. Anyway, I'll leave this in the description. Please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. If you'd like to support this channel, I'll leave my GoFundMe in the description. If you'd like to follow me on Instagram, I'll leave that there as well. Peace.